At 40, something profound begins to happen within you. It is not dramatic, it does not arrive as a sudden revelation or a loud awakening. It comes quietly, almost unnoticed, like a soft shift in the wind that you only feel when you stop running. For years, desire moved outward. You wanted more success, more recognition, more security, more love. Desire pushed you to build, to compete, to survive. It kept you alert, restless, hungry. And that hunger was necessary. It shaped you. It gave you experience. It taught you the ways of the world. But somewhere around 40, desire begins to change its direction. You wake up one morning and realize the things you chased so fiercely no longer satisfy you the same way. Achievements still come, but the excitement fades faster. Praise still arrives, but it doesn't reach as deep. Even pleasures, once intoxicating, now feel incomplete. Not wrong, just insufficient. And this is not failure, this is maturity. Desire does not disappear. It turns inward. You begin to notice pauses in your thinking, moments where ambition falls silent, spaces where the mind no longer screams more but gently asks, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I running? Why does success feel so empty when I finally touch it? Earlier, desire said, I want to become. Now desire whispers, I want to understand. This inward turning is deeply unsettling at first, because the world has trained you to look outside for fulfillment. When that outer hunger weakens, you may feel lost, directionless, as if something important has slipped away. You may even try to revive old ambitions, force old dreams back to life. But they no longer breathe the same way. And that can feel frightening, because you don't yet realize that something greater is being born. At 40, desire grows quieter, but deeper. You begin to crave meaning instead of applause, depth instead of noise, truth instead of comfort. You start valuing mornings of silence more than nights of celebration. You listen more, you react less, and for the first time, you notice how tired you are, not physically, but inwardly. Tired of pretending, proving, performing. There is a soft ache in this phase, an ache not of pain, but of longing. You long to feel whole, you long to feel real, you long to rest in yourself without needing validation. And this longing is sacred, because desire, when turned inward, becomes inquiry. It becomes a flame that no longer burns the world, but illuminates the self. You begin to question beliefs you once defended. You see patterns in your relationships. You recognize how fear shaped many of your choices, not with judgment, but with clarity. You notice how often you lived on autopilot, how many decisions were inherited, not chosen, how often you betrayed your inner truth to meet outer expectations. And instead of blaming yourself, you feel compassion, a gentle compassion for the younger you, who did not know any better. This is when desire transforms from hunger into awareness. You no longer want to conquer life. You want to be at peace with it. Moments slow down. You savor simple things, a quiet cup of tea, a deep breath, a meaningful conversation. There is less urgency, but more intensity, less excitement, but more presence. The mind that once chased becomes a mind that witnesses, the heart that once demanded begins to open. And sometimes, there are pauses, long pauses, where you sit alone and feel something unfamiliar, a stillness that is not empty, a silence that feels alive. In those pauses, desire is no longer shouting. It is listening to something deeper than ambition, something older than personality, something that has been waiting patiently beneath all your striving. At 40, desire no longer asks, what can I get from life? It begins to ask, what is life asking of me? And in that question, a second journey quietly begins. Suffering does not arrive in your life to break you. It arrives to slow you down, to deepen you, to make you real. In the early years, pain feels personal. It feels unfair. You ask, why me? You resist it, fight it, try to escape it. You believe suffering is a mistake, something that should not have happened if life were just. And so you carry pain like a wound, open, bleeding, unresolved. But with time, something changes. The same pain that once made you bitter begins to make you quiet. The same losses that once shattered you begin to teach you. And slowly, almost invisibly, suffering starts to mature into wisdom. This maturation does not happen quickly. It cannot be forced. Wisdom is not born from pain itself, It is born from staying with pain long enough to understand it. When you are young, suffering hardens you or frightens you. It makes you defensive. You build walls. You promise yourself you will never feel that way again. You learn how to hide, how to distract, how to move on without healing. But life is patient. It repeats the lesson in different forms, different faces, different situations, until one day you no longer run, you no longer resist, you sit with the ache, you breathe with it. And in that stillness, something inside you softens instead of collapsing. This is the turning point. You begin to notice that suffering has patterns. That pain often points to attachment. That disappointment often follows expectation. That heartbreak often reveals where you gave your power away. And this noticing is not intellectual, it is lived, it is etched into your nervous system. Suffering teaches you humility. It strips away the illusion that you are in control. It shows you how fragile your plans are, how temporary your certainties are. And in doing so it removes arrogance, not through lectures, but through experience. After enough suffering, you stop judging others so quickly. You stop assuming you know their story. You stop expecting life to behave according to your preferences. A quiet compassion grows in you. You recognize pain in other people's eyes. You hear it in their words. You sense it in their silence. And instead of reacting, you respond. Instead of correcting, you understand. This is wisdom taking root. Suffering also teaches you patience, not the kind that waits impatiently, but the kind that endures. You learn that some things cannot be fixed, some wounds cannot be rushed, some answers do not arrive on demand. You learn to wait without resentment, to endure without bitterness. This changes your inner posture toward life. Where you once demanded explanations, you now accept mystery. Where you once needed certainty, you now allow ambiguity. You begin to trust the process, not because it is comfortable, but because you have survived its storms. Suffering refines your perception. You start seeing what truly matters. Trivial desires lose their grip. Superficial conflicts no longer excite you. You become selective with your energy. You protect your peace not out of selfishness, but out of wisdom earned through exhaustion. Pain teaches you where your limits are, and within those limits it teaches you freedom. You realize that joy feels deeper after sorrow, that silence feels richer after chaos, that presence feels sacred after loss. Suffering sharpens your appreciation. It gives contrast to life. Without it, happiness would be shallow, fleeting, unrecognizable. There is also a sacred honesty that suffering brings. It dissolves pretense. It exposes your fears, your attachments, your unexamined beliefs. It brings you face to face with yourself, not the image you present, but the truth you carry. And in that confrontation, something authentic emerges. You stop pretending to be strong. You stop hiding vulnerability. You stop apologizing for your depth. Suffering matures you because it demands sincerity. It does not accept shortcuts. It does not respond to ego. It requires presence, patience, and courage. And those who stay, who listen, who allow themselves to be reshaped rather than shattered, emerge with a quiet strength that cannot be faked. This strength is not loud. It does not announce itself. It shows up as steadiness, as clarity, as an unshakable inner center. When suffering matures into wisdom, pain no longer defines you. It educates you. And without realizing it, you begin to walk differently, speak differently, live differently. Not because life became easier, but because you became deeper. There comes a time in life when the voice inside you changes. It grows softer, slower, less demanding. This is not weakness. This is awareness awakening. For years, the ego was in charge. It spoke loudly. It insisted. It pushed. It wanted to be right, to be seen, to be validated. It defined you through labels, success and failure, winning and losing, superior and inferior. It told you who you were based on comparison. And you believed it, because you didn't yet know any other voice. The ego helped you survive. It gave you identity. It gave you ambition. But survival is not the same as truth. As life moves you through experiences, success that didn't fulfill you, love that didn't last, plans that collapsed despite your best efforts, the ego begins to tire. Its strategies stop working, its promises feel empty, and slowly, very slowly, its grip loosens. This weakening is not sudden. It happens through exhaustion. You get tired of proving yourself. tired of defending your image, tired of carrying opinions like weapons. You notice how much energy I takes to maintain the story of me. How much tension lives in constantly protecting your identity. And one day, without effort, you stop pushing so hard. In that pause, awareness enters. Awareness does not shout. It does not compete. It does not need approval. It simply observes. You begin to watch your thoughts instead of obeying them. You notice reactions arising and passing. You see how anger flares and dissolves, how fear tightens the body, how pride inflates the mind. And for the first time you realize, this is happening in me, but this is not me. This realization changes everything. Earlier the ego said, I am angry. Now, awareness says, anger is passing through. Earlier the ego said, I am afraid. Now awareness says, fear is being felt. That small shift creates immense freedom. The ego weakens because it feeds on identification. When you stop identifying, when you stop saying this is who I am, it loses nourishment. And awareness strengthens, because you are finally present enough to notice reality as it is, not as your mind interprets it. You become less reactive, not because you suppress emotion, but because you understand it. Silence begins to feel safe. Being alone no longer frightens you. You are no longer at war with yourself. Awareness brings humility, not humiliation, humility. You see your limitations clearly, without shame. You admit when you don't know. You listen more than you speak. You no longer need to dominate conversations to feel important. There is a quiet dignity in this state. You stop arguing to win. You stop explaining to be understood. You stop correcting others to feel superior. Not because you lack intelligence, but because awareness sees the futility of ego battles. You begin to sense life directly. Moments become vivid. Colors feel sharper. Emotions feel honest. Even pain feels clean, no longer layered with races, dance and story. The ego creates noise. Awareness creates clarity, and clarity is deeply empowering. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of compulsively act. You forgive. Not because you are virtuous, but because carrying resentment feels heavy and unnecessary. As awareness strengthens, compassion arises naturally. You see the ego in others struggling the same way yours once did. You recognize insecurity beneath arrogance, fear beneath control, longing beneath anger, and instead of judging, you understand. This understanding does not make you passive, it makes you grounded. You can say no without guilt. You can walk away without resentment. You can stand firm without aggression, because your center is no longer dependent on outcomes. The ego seeks certainty. Awareness accepts mystery. The ego needs labels. Awareness sees movement. The ego wants to be somebody. Awareness rests in being. There are moments, quiet, ordinary moments, where you feel deeply present. No rush, no resistance, just a simple sense of aliveness. In those moments, there is no ego to protect, no image to maintain, just awareness, witnessing life unfolding. And you realize something profound. Without words, you are not becoming smaller as the ego weakens. You are becoming vast, not louder, but deeper, not harder, but clearer, not separate, but connected. The ego weakens because it was never meant to lead forever. Awareness strengthens because it was always meant to guide you home. There comes a moment in life when striving begins to feel heavy, not because you have failed, but because you have seen enough. For years, ambition drove you forward. It gave direction to your energy. It told you where to go, what to chase, who to become. Ambition promised fulfillment if you just reached a little higher, worked a little harder, sacrificed a little more. And so you ran. You achieved. You accumulated. You proved yourself again and again. But somewhere along the way, something inside you grew quiet. The goals you once held so tightly began to loosen their grip. Success still mattered, but not in the same way. You noticed how each achievement came with a brief rush, followed by a familiar emptiness. You saw how ambition kept moving the finish line, how satisfaction never stayed. This was not disillusionment, this was clarity. Ambition is fueled by the future. Purpose is rooted in the present. When ambition leads, life becomes a constant preparation for happiness. You endure today for a better tomorrow. You postpone peace. You tolerate discomfort in the hope that one day it will all be worth it. But there comes a time when the soul grows tired of postponement. You begin to ask quieter questions. Not how far can I go, but why am I going? Not what will this give me, but what is this giving through me? These questions do not arise from weakness, they arise from maturity. Purpose enters when you no longer need to impress life. You realize that ambition was never wrong, it was just incomplete. It trained your discipline, it sharpened your focus, it taught you endurance. But ambition alone cannot tell you how to live. It can only tell you how to climb. Purpose tells you where to stand. Purpose does not shout, it does not rush, it does not demand. It feels like alignment. You begin to sense when something is right. Not because it looks successful, but because it feels honest. You feel energized without being anxious, tired without being empty. There is effort, but no inner resistance. You stop measuring your worth by outcomes. You stop comparing your path to others. You stop fearing slow progress. Because purpose is not concerned with speed, work begins to feel different. Even ordinary tasks carry meaning when they are connected to something larger than the self. You are no longer working just to build an identity. You are contributing, serving, expressing something authentic. This does not make life easier. It makes life coherent. Your choices begin to reflect your values. You say no more often, not out of fear but out of clarity. You protect your time. You respect your energy. You recognize that not every opportunity is meant for you. Ambition says, take everything you can. Purpose says, take only what aligns. And with this alignment comes peace. You no longer feel torn in multiple directions. You feel gathered, centered. Your actions arise from understanding rather than urgency. Even challenges feel meaningful, not as obstacles but as part of a larger movement. Purpose also changes how you relate to success and failure. Success no longer intoxicates you. Failure no longer humiliates you. Both become feedback, both become teachers. You learn to trust the rhythm of your life. There is a deep emotional shift here, subtle but powerful. A softening of the inner pressure. A release from the need to constantly justify your existence. You begin to live less for applause and more for integrity. You feel a quiet confidence, not the loud confidence of ambition, but the grounded confidence of knowing you are where you need to be. This confidence does not depend on recognition. It does not collapse when misunderstood. It does not fade when unseen. Because purpose is not about being noticed. It is about being faithful, faithful to your values, faithful to your inner truth, faithful to the work life is asking you to do, right now. And in the pauses between actions, in the spaces where ambition once whispered anxiously, there is now a calm awareness, a sense that you are no longer chasing life, you are participating in it. There is a freedom that does not come from changing your circumstances, it comes from changing your relationship with them. For most of life, freedom is imagined as something external. More money, more time, fewer responsibilities, the ability to choose without restriction. And so you wait. You tell yourself, when this ends, when that improves, when I reach there, then I will be free. But time passes, situations change, and the feeling of freedom remains postponed. Then one day, quietly, something shifts. You realize that the chains you feel are not always outside you. They live in expectations, in fears, in old stories you keep repeating, in the need for control. And in that realization, inner freedom becomes possible. Inner freedom begins the moment you stop fighting what is, not surrender as defeat, but surrender as understanding. You see how much energy you spent resisting reality, how often you argued with life internally, how many moments you lost wishing they were different. And slowly, you begin to let go, not because life is perfect, but because resistance is exhausting. This letting go is deeply emotional. There is grief in it. Grief for the life you imagined. Grief for the outcomes that never came. Grief for the versions of yourself that tried so hard. And as you allow this grief to move through you, something unexpected happens. The heart becomes lighter. You begin to experience moments where nothing needs to be fixed. Moments where you are simply here, breathing, sensing, existing. And in those moments you taste a freedom that does not depend on permission. Inner freedom is not doing whatever you want. It is no longer being forced by what you don't want. You notice how thoughts arise and fall away. You watch memories surface and dissolve. You feel emotions without being consumed by them. And this watching creates space. Space between stimulus and response. Space between feeling and identity. Space where choice lives. You stop reacting automatically. You pause. You breathe. You choose. And that choice, even in small things, feels liberating. You are no longer a prisoner of habit. Fear loses its authority. It still visits, but it no longer commands. You hear it, and move anyway. You recognize its voice without letting it drive. Is not bravery in the dramatic sense. It is quiet courage. The courage to stay present. Inner freedom also reshapes desire. You want less, but feel more. You no longer cling to outcomes. You engage fully, then release. Success is enjoyed. Failure is absorbed. Neither defines you. There is a deep emotional relief in this. The body relaxes. The mind softens. The heart opens. You stop needing everyone to understand you. You stop demanding fairness from life. You stop negotiating your peace. There is a sense of self-sufficiency, not isolation but inner completeness. This does not make you indifferent. It makes you authentic. You love more freely, without possession. You give without depletion. You connect without losing yourself. Because inner freedom removes the fear of loss that once controlled your attachments. Even pain feels different now. Pain is felt, fully, but it does not accumulate. It moves through you without creating identity. You cry without collapsing. You grieve without hardening. You feel without drowning. And in those pauses between emotions, there is stillness. A stillness that does not depend on silence. A peace that does not require escape. You begin to trust yourself, not the personality, but the deeper intelligence within you. You trust your ability to respond to life, whatever it brings. And that trust is freedom. Inner freedom is knowing that no moment can imprison you, because you are not confined to any single moment. You walk through life with an inner openness. You participate fully, yet remain unattached. You care deeply, yet remain centered. You act responsibly, yet remain light. There is a softness in this way of being, and a strength. Because when inner freedom becomes possible, life no longer feels like something happening to you. Life becomes something you are spacious enough to hold.